The woman carefully studied the silver thread on the ground. She looked up and said, "You mentioned there were 2 roads, one full of traps. What happens if we don't go on these roads and step on the line instead?" The woman spoke about a method that Tang Mo also thought of, but he was aware there was something wrong. The moonflower swayed in the moonlight and said, "Then you step on it." The woman was stunned. "You, step on it and see what happens. Come on, I'm right here waiting for you. But if I were you, I would choose to come from one of the 2 roads. This line is so fine. Who knows, while stepping on the line you might end up in both roads." "Oh, did I lie? This time I really didn't lie. I swear on the nose of the Queen of Hearts." The woman's expression gradually sank. In the face of this moonflower that loved to lie, it wasn't just here, Tang Mo was also powerless. The moonflower loved to lie but no one knew which sentence was true and which one was false. Perhaps there were no traps on both roads and it was nonsense. Perhaps there was a trap on one road or traps on both roads. In the face of such a lying flower, its words had no significance. Tang Mo squatted down and looked at the silver thread on the ground. This line extended from their feet and ended at the high platform where the moonflower was. The moonflower was covered by a glass and it currently shouldn't be able to escape from the glass. It should be the same as the flowers in the greenhouse. It could speak but it couldn't move. For example, the white rose could only watch as it was plucked by the baby-faced youth. This line should have nothing to do with the moonflower. It didn't draw the line. Tang Mo speculated, this line might already exist or it might be drawn by the guards who moved the moonflower. I am more inclined to this, the line is something the Black Tower added to increase the difficulty of our branch mission. So far, Tang Mo's group had encountered 2 side missions. The first mission required them to arrive at the glass greenhouse in 10 minutes. They didn't encounter any dangers along the way. As long as they ran at full speed, they could reach the glass greenhouse within the time limit. The second mission was to find the moonflower that loved to lie. Now they had seen the moonflower and only need to pick it up to complete the task. Along the way, they only met a fierce panther in one room. This black panther was very strong. If Tang Mo hadn't used his a fast man ability, he might have been seriously injured. But it wouldn't threaten his life. Therefore, this second task wasn't difficult. Tang Mo said, the sentence that this corridor has a trap should be true and not a lie. Tang Mo looked at the woman and the youth. It is about 10 meters from our current position to that podium. As you said, normally we have 3 choices. Go from the left, go from the right or walk on the line. The youth suddenly raised a hand. I won't walk on the line. Tang Mo and the woman looked at him. The woman asked in a strange manner, what are you doing? If you go or not has nothing to do with us. The youth pointed at Tang Mo. Didn't he mean to let the 3 of us each take a separate path? The moonflower suddenly let out a strange laughter, making the 3 people look at it. The flower had a noble and elegant appearance in the bright moonlight. Based on its beautiful appearance, no one would think that it had just let out the sinister laughter. It was obviously the youth's words that made it laugh. Tang Mo said lightly, I don't want the 3 of us to separate. Where you decide to go is your own will. I won't force anyone. I am just explaining the options. But Mr. Bruce, I'm curious. Why don't you want to walk on the line? Does it say not to walk on the line? The youth sincerely pointed to the moonflower. The moonflower acted like it was watching a movie. Once it was suddenly called, it froze for a moment before gently saying, yes, I said that walking on the line could be regarded as walking on both roads. I really didn't lie. The baby-faced youth smiled. Yes, I believe in you. The moonflower, perhaps the moonflower itself didn't think there would be a human who believed in it. Its petals shook against the glass and kept shaking for a long time. Tang Mo looked between the moonflower and youth while continuing, I personally don't recommend walking on this line. This line is too thin. Even if you stand on tiptoes and walk, your feet would tread on both sides. This behavior is likely to be seen as stepping on both roads at once. He suddenly looked at the baby-faced youth. Mr. Bruce, which way do you want to go? The youth replied, I will casually decide after watching you. Tang Mo looked at the woman. The woman was a bit hesitant. She thought for a while before asking Tang Mo, where are you going? Tang Mo didn't hide anything because the 2 people would see his prop anyway. It was better to say it directly. I will walk on the wall. I have a prop that allows me to ignore gravity and walk for 10 minutes on any plane. This was the time for Tang Mo to use the prop. No matter which road you go, it will be dangerous. Therefore, I want to try walking on the wall. The woman looked at Tang Mo with surprise. It can be like this. Tang Mo looked at the moonflower. It didn't say that it couldn't. The moonflower said, I didn't think about it but it is possible. The woman listened to Tang Mo's words and walked to the walls, starting to ponder the possibility. However, she soon gave it. Tang Mo couldn't walk 10 meters on the wall without the use of his magic shoes. The method of walking on the wall was only applicable to Tang Mo. The woman and the youth couldn't imitate it. Time passed and the woman swung between the 2 roads. She walked to the left side of the wire and then the right. Tang Mo wasn't anxious. In such times, no one wanted to be the first person. If it stayed like this, perhaps none of them would advance. The woman suggested, the 3 of us will go at the same time. Tang Mo looked at her. The woman didn't sweat at Tang Mo's stare and said calmly, nobody is willing to go first. To tell you the truth, I also refuse to go first. If we continue this way, we will never complete the branch mission. Thus, we will go together. Isn't this fair? The woman looked at the baby-faced youth. He smiled and said, I don't object. She looked at Tang Mo again. Tang Mo looked calm. Good. The woman took a deep breath and slowly let it out. Then let's go together. We are now standing at this line. In 10 seconds, we will choose our own path and go at the same time. When we are ready, the three of us will put our hands behind each other's back to prevent someone from not moving like a scared mouse. After listening to this, the youth looked at the woman with a trace of interest. Tang Mo stared indifferently at her. Half a minute later, Tang Mo and the youth said together, I have no opinion. The woman said, then stand on a side. Tang Mo understand the woman's words. Before she put forward the suggestion, Tang Mo also wanted to say similar words. This game of picking up the moonflower hadn't yet begun and there was a hidden seed buried in the three people. The three of them weren't friends. If the game wasn't handled well, the three people might not choose the right path and there might even be fights. It was because no one wanted to be the first to go. There are only two paths. Once the first person went, the remaining two people would be able to walk along this road if it was the right one. But suppose there were traps and the remaining two people couldn't go this way. This wasn't the first person just bait for the other two? At this time, the woman stood up and proposed that the three of them go together. Yes, it was only by going together that team conflicts can be avoided. This was the fairest way to all three people, but saying it was too cruel. To ensure that no one would secretly retreat, the three of them would put their hands on each other's backs. Once the time was up, they would push their teammate. You don't want to go, you have to go. This was the intention behind putting a hand on each other's backs. Tang Mo chose to walk on the wall. He looked at the two roads before reaching for a button on his sleeves. He threw the button into the air before catching it. Then he opened his hand and looked at the back and front of the button. The youth came to his side. Zhao Zhao, do you still believe in this? Tang Mo was stunned and couldn't respond to the Zhao Zhao that he was suddenly called. As the youth placed his face in front of Tang Mo's, Tang Mo recovered and took half a step back. He spoke in a cold voice, Mr. Bruce, my surname is Zhao. Don't call me like that, it is very disgusting. The youth smiled cheekily. I gave you a nickname. Isn't it nice? Your surname is better than hers. It would be hard to hear if I call her Wang Wang. The woman sneered. Thank you for not calling me that. This small episode slightly eased the tense atmosphere. Tang Mo was on the left, the woman in the middle and the youth on the right. The three people stood at the beginning of the silver line. How about you let me do the countdown? The youth suddenly said. Tang Mo and the woman turned to look at him. He said, it doesn't matter who countdowns. As long as someone dares push the others out, the others will push everyone together. This is fair. We will all go together. Therefore, let me count down. I am very lucky. Other people have called me Lucky Yao, Lucky Bruce. Yao? Was Yao part of his name? Tang Mo wondered. The woman said, I have no opinion. I also have no opinion. The baby-faced youth smiled. He pressed a hand on the woman's back while the woman pressed a hand against his back and Tang Mo's. Tang Mo also put his hand on the woman's back. The three people looked ahead together. In the quiet corridor, an off-tune voice sang. Ten-ah. Tang Mo and the woman frowned. The youth was singing in a strange voice and it was his own improvised song. 9 is coming. Where is 8? There is 7, enough. If you don't count down normally then I will do it. The woman couldn't bear it anymore. The youth made a helpless face. This is for everyone to relax and not be nervous. Then I will count down normally. 10, 9, 8, Tang Mo held his breath as he heard the youth counting down seriously. He prepared to use his magic shoes and ran along the left side of the wall. This was the result of his button. He couldn't decide between the left and right wall and ended up choosing the left side with heads and tails. 6, 5, 4 3 2 1 go. The last 4 seconds suddenly became faster, almost becoming 1 second. Tang Mo and the woman weren't ready as the youth pushed the woman forward. The woman wasn't willing to show weakness and mercilessly pushed Tang Mo and the youth out as well. Tang Mo stepped on the wall and took another step. With the help of his magic shoes, he quickly stabilized his body. Then he looked up and was surprised. The woman and youth had actually chosen the right side. Although the probability of choosing each road was 50%, both of them choosing the right side was only 1/4. This probability actually wasn't too low. Tang Mo was just surprised for a moment before speeding up. With his speed, he could cross 10 meters in 2 seconds. But the moment he stepped forward, bang! A deafening roar filled the narrow corridor. Beside the wall that Tang Mo was standing on, the floor of the corridor suddenly collapsed. It wasn't just the corridor on his side. The side with the youth and woman also collapsed. The three of them understood immediately. The woman screamed, you lied. Both sides are traps. The moonflower laughed. Both roads did have traps but the traps of the two roads were different. On Tang Mo's side, the floor disappeared and there was a dark and bottomless pit. In the place where the silver line originally was, a transparent wall appeared out of thin air. Tang Mo's side was separated from the other side, forming 2 separate spaces. The youth reacted the fastest. At almost the same time that the floor collapsed, he threw a dagger forward. The dagger was inserted into the wooden platform where the moonflower was located. The youth stepped on the wall and a wire connected to the dagger he had thrown emerged from his sleeve. He deftly flipped through the air using the strength of his dagger and landed on the ground next to the platform. Tang Mo's side was very bad. The moment that the floor disappeared, a bloody and big hand emerged from the bottomless pit and grabbed at Tang Mo. Tang Mo constantly moved on the wall to avoid it, the hand smashing against the wall. Then the hand disappeared and a terrible suction force emerged from the bottomless pit. The woman was also using a concealed weapon to reach the finish line. Under the effect of this suction, her concealed weapon fell down. She screamed as she was pulled down only 1 meter before the end. It was the same for Tang Mo. He could walk on the wall, but the wall was broken and the suction force emerged. In this instant, Tang Mo didn't hesitate to raise his head and look at the baby-faced youth already standing at the end. Bruce Wayne, who might be surnamed Yao, was watching his two companions with interest. Tang Mo reached out and pointed his palm at the youth's face. A rubber rope flew out from his palm and tied around the youth's right arm. At the same time, the woman grabbed at the youth's trousers with one hand before she fell completely. A hint of astonishment appeared on the youth's face. The suction was too strong and both Tang Mo and the woman were being sucked down by it. The youth stared at both of them as his body moved in the direction of the bottomless pit. His eyes were cold, but he spoke teasing words, "Hey, don't drag me down." The woman sent him a pleading look. "Save me." The youth lowered his head and looked at the miserable woman, not doing anything. The two people stared at each other for a moment. Then the pants that the woman was desperately holding was torn off. She looked at the youth with despair before falling, her screams echoing from the bottomless hole. Tang Mo looked at the scene while holding the rubber rope in his hand. The youth looked at the place where the woman had disappeared for a long time. Tang Mo couldn't see his expression from this position. Then the youth looked up and smiled at Tang Mo. "This rope is very interesting. Can I untie it?" Ability: I am the man who wants to be the Pirate King. Function: the palm of the hand can shoot out a rubber rope with excellent elasticity. Due to cause and effect, the tied object can't actively until the rubber rope for 1 minute. This youth started trying to untie the rope. Tang Mo didn't have time to hesitate. The youth held the wall with one hand to stabilize his body, so that he wouldn't be dragged into the bottomless hole by Tang Mo. With his other hand, he tried to untie the rope around his arm. Tang Mo didn't express any opinion about this behavior. He pulled the rope with both arms, pulling himself out of the pit one by one. Once 60 seconds passed, Tang Mo's feet just stepped on the ground. He walked without any expression to the youth and untied the rubber rope from the youth's arm. The youth moved his wrist. "Is this your prop?" "Well. Pausing time, walking on the walk in a rubber rope that I can't untie. Are they all props? Or are they abilities?" Tang Mo didn't answer him. He put the rubber rope in his pocket and pretended it was a prop. The rope went into his pocket and slowly disappeared. He suddenly squatted down, pretending to tie his shoelaces while drawing a circle lightly on the ground. Then Tang Mo looked up at the youth. The youth was still smiling at him. Their eyes clashed. 3 minutes later, the youth smiled. "Are you thinking about why I didn't save her? She tore my pants and they were my favorite pants. If she was still alive, I will find her to get money. This has nothing to do with me." Tang Mo shifted his gaze. "Thank you." After saying this, Tang Mo turned and walked to the wooden platform. The youth's eyes narrowed as he heard this. There was no doubt that the baby-faced youth could save the woman. From this brief contact, Tang Mo clearly saw that the youth's skill and reaction speed was absolutely not worse than his, it was likely even better. Putting aside abilities and props, this youth's pure strength was probably higher than Tang Mo's. Tang Mo didn't know what he did before the earth went online, but Tang Mo knew that only Fu Wenduo had better skills than this baby-faced youth. In just 1 second, the youth could escape from the collapsing floor and reach the place where the moonflower was. He would have been able to pull the woman up in 2 seconds and save her. It was because even Tang Mo could do this. But he didn't do it. Tang Mo wasn't interested in knowing why the youth didn't do it. But if Tang Mo hadn't used the rubber rope to wrap around the youth's arm, he definitely would have fallen. The youth couldn't untie the rubber rope and was forced to help Tang Mo. Tang Mo still said thank you. Of course, he said thank you while cursing the youth. They were two different things. Tang Mo couldn't forget that he was the one pulling himself up while the youth tried to untie the rope. The youth didn't have an obligation to save him, but Tang Mo also had no obligation not to curse him. So, draw a circle to curse you. Tang Mo looked at the moonflower inside the glass. He seemed to be staring at the beautiful flower while he was actually focused on the youth. He had to be more careful with this person. The moonflower hadn't expected these two humans to arrive at its side. It trembled as it said, You came over here? So fast? Hey wait, don't take off the glass cover and pick me up. It will be dangerous. Tang Mo asked lightly, picking you up is dangerous? Are you lying again? The moonflower was so anxious that it was constantly shaking. I'm definitely not lying. You really can't pick me up. Don't pick me up. Please don't pick me up. You will have bad luck if you pick me up. Tang Mo said, you have lied more times than your number of petals. Just now, you said that one of these two roads were dangerous and one was safe. In fact, both roads are dangerous. No matter which way you choose, the floor will collapse and you will be sucked into the bottomless pit. The pale moonflower tried to defend itself. But there really is one road more dangerous. The road you chose. You saw the hand. The two roads are different. One road was safer. I didn't lie. Did you really want us to choose a way? The moonflower's voice abruptly stopped. Tang Mo spoke coldly, in this corridor, we weren't taking a road but a space. The road is the ground. If walking on the ground was dangerous, I shouldn't have triggered a trap if I walked in the wall. The real danger is the whole space. The entire space towards you was a trap. As long as we move forward, we can't avoid danger. The hardest way to pick you up is to not choose one path. It was the same no matter what road was chosen. They both had traps. It was just a hard road and a harder road. The Moonflower gave these options for two purposes. One was to separate the team. Just now, Tang Mo's group had agreed that all three of them would go together and didn't give anyone a chance to evade. If the other teams weren't as decisive as them, they would fight among themselves before choosing a road, causing casualties. There would be unnecessary losses before choosing a road. Another purpose was to make the players relax their vigilance. All three people going together was just one method. Another way was to use force to bully a teammate into going first. If Tang Mo was a bit crueler, he could use force to make the woman go first. He wasn't sure about the youth, but the woman's strength should be below his. He could compel the woman to walk and the youth probably wouldn't stop him. Once the woman chose a road that contained a trap, Tang Mo would naturally go to the other road. Tang Mo had guessed that there might be traps on both roads. But once the woman confirmed that there were definitely traps on one road, he would inevitably slightly relax. As a result, the trap would trigger and Tang Mo was less likely to survive. The Moonflower put in painstaking effort to stop itself from being picked up by a player. Tang Mo decisively took off the glass cover and held the Moonflower's rhizome. The Moonflower mournfully wailed, "Don't pick me. Please don't pick me. This time I'm not lying. There really will be consequences you can't afford if you pick me up. Please don't pick me up." The youth walked to Tang Mo's side and looked down at this flower. "But if we don't pick you up, we won't be able to complete our task. We can't get out of here until we finish the task. Otherwise, are we here to talk to you while you lie? Hey, this option sounds good. Don't pick me, and you will regret it." Snap. Tang Mo picked up the Moonflower with no expression. Ding dong. Branch mission Find the Moonflower that loves to lie has been completed. A loud voice echoed in the corridor. Once Tang Mo picked up the Moonflower, it seemed to lose the ability to speak. It lowered its bud and obediently stayed still in Tang Mo's hand. Tang Mo had no time to observe this flower when a rumbling sound was heard in front of him. Tang Mo and the youth immediately looked up, watching in front of them warily. They saw that the wall in front of them was slowly rising, revealing the world behind the wall. Tang Mo held the small parasol, wary of possible enemies behind the wall. A minute later, the wall rose completely. When Tang Mo saw the world beyond the wall, his eyes widened with surprise. Behind the Moonflower, it was actually an equilateral triangle room. On one side of the room, the wall rose and revealed the corridor containing Tang Mo holding the Moonflower and the youth. The walls on the other sides of the triangle room rose to reveal two identical corridors. One corridor contained a silver Moonflower lazily stretching under the glass cover. The other side contained a boy who looked like a primary school student holding a Moonflower in his hand, staring vigilantly at Tang Mo and the baby-faced youth. Above the equilateral triangle room was a bright and round full moon. The clear moonlight shone through the glass dome onto the room with 3 corridors. The rays of light flashed on the ground and walls. Tang Mo moved to the side, letting the moonlight shine on his feet. He discovered that once the moonlight shone on the ground and walls, these walls seemed to become magnificent gemstones, reflecting a dazzling brilliance. His heart stopped as he suddenly remembered a place. Ding dong. Triggered the main mission, hide-and-seek game in the gem corridor. The rules of the game: first, there are 999 forks in the gem corridor. Second, there must be at least one road at each fork. If it is the wrong direction, then it will be a dead end. Third, in every dead end, there are 2 guards of the Queen of Hearts patrolling. Fourth, only those who hold the Moonflower can walk out of the gem corridor. Fifth, one end of the gem corridor is the Queen of Hearts bedroom. Insert the Moonflower in the vase in the Queen's bedroom and the gem corridor will be closed forever. It is said that every human who stays in the gem corridor for more than 3 hours can no longer leave this magical corridor. They shall be turned into statues by this corridor. It is an honor for every underground person to become an animal statue of the Queen of Hearts. The gem corridor also thinks so. The crisp child's voice sounded in Tang Mo's mind. The moment he heard this voice, he turned to look at the youth next to him. The latter seemed to have heard something as he looked at Tang Mo. They looked up and at the little boy in the other corridor. The 3 people looked at each other for a while before they walked into the center of the triangular room. The little boy held a Moonflower in his hand. He looked at the top of Tang Mo and the youth's head. Tang Mo also bent their heads to look at the boy's head. The little boy stared at them cautiously and said, "You are green, I am red. We are different." Tang Mo saw that the pattern above the boy's head was red. When he met the woman and baby-faced youth, Tang Mo knew that the 3 of them had identical green figures above their heads. Now this boy also had a figure on top of his head. The shape was exactly the same and only the color was different. His figure was red, not green. One side had 2 adults while the other side was a lone child. This was a dangerous tower attack game. An unknown human suddenly emerged and Tang Mo wasn't sure about whether this was a trap or not. At this time, he didn't mind using the force of an adult to oppress the boy. He said cold, "Tell me what you encountered before the wall rose. Tell us." The little boy gripped his Moonflower tightly and looked up at Tang Mo. At the moment, the boy discovered that he was at a disadvantage. First of all, 2 adults emerged from the same corridor and they were most likely teammates. In addition, they were 2 adults and he was just a kid. In terms of force, he wasn't the opponent of these 2 men at all. Secondly, they had different figures above their heads. His was red while theirs was green. It was easy to think of them as opponents. The boy thought quickly and calmed down. Let me guess first. You are teammates and used to be 3 people, right? He guessed. Tang Mo continued to ask a question instead of replying. Before the wall rose, what did you see and do? The little boy looked at Tang Mo's expression and looked slightly relieved. He said, before this wall rose, I had 2 teammates. We have 3 people and the task was to find the moonflower that loves to lie. If I'm not guessing wrong, the 2 of you also had to find the lying moonflower. The little boy pointed to the flower in Tang Mo's hand. Then he continued the analysis, if I'm right, the task on both sides is the same. In this respect, we aren't enemies. And you should have heard the main mission that the Black Tower released just now. The boy didn't shy away from speaking of the main mission. Tang Mo's eyes narrowed while the baby-faced youth laughed. The 2 of them didn't deny it. The little boy went on. In any case, we are now in the gem corridor. Based on the main mission, are we really enemies? It didn't state it in my main mission and I don't believe it will be in your main mission either. Since we aren't real enemies, let us analyze, what is the meaning of these 3 moonflowers being in different corridors and why is there no one in that corridor? The boy looked 11 or 12 years old but the words that came out of his mouth made sense. Tang Mo was almost circumvented by him. This boy was very clever and didn't say his main mission. Tang Mo also didn't want him to say it directly. It was because he didn't know what the baby-faced youth's main mission was. Assuming that the baby-faced youth had a different task to Tang Mo, something might be exposed if the little boy said his main mission. If the baby-faced youth and the boy had the same mission, the 2 of them could form an alliance to deal with Tang Mo. If the little boy and Tang Mo's main mission was the same, the youth would know there was a problem and hide his true mission. It would be troublesome if the baby-faced youth, Tang Mo, and the little boy had different main missions. For Tang Mo, the most important thing was to leave the gem corridor within 3 hours. The little boy saw Tang Mo and the youth's expressions and didn't speak. Then he took the initiative to pass his moonflower to Tang Mo. Tang Mo was startled while the little boy spoke calmly. I can't beat you. I don't know what your ability is but I know I can't beat you. Therefore, I want to win your trust. The boy didn't say this sentence but Tang Mo and the baby-faced youth understood. If Tang Mo really wanted this boy's moonflower, he could grab it directly and the boy wouldn't be able to keep it. But the little boy took the initiative to hand the moonflower over to Tang Mo and the baby-faced youth. He didn't know the relationship between Tang Mo and the baby-faced youth but he had to show sincerity. In fact, he also hinted at the content of the main mission. Only those who hold the moonflower can walk out of the gem corridor. The moonflower was extremely important. Tang Mo didn't know if the boy had the same game rules as himself but the boy proved with his actions that he knew the moonflower was very important. With this moonflower as a guarantee, the relationship between the 3 people temporarily stabilized. The 3 men entered the last corridor where no one was present. After Tang Mo took the moonflower, the collapsed floor behind them was restored to normal. In this corridor, the floor didn't collapse. A silver moonflower was covered in a glass dome. When it discovered Tang Mo's group of 3, it panicked and repeatedly said, "Don't pick me up, don't pick me up. It will be very dangerous if you pick me up." The baby-faced youth said, "Will we find ourselves in the gem corridor if we pick you up?" The moonflower's voice abruptly stopped. The baby-faced youth looked at Tang Mo and the little boy. Sure enough, this is the so-called dangerous thing. Tang Mo didn't care about him. He opened the glass cover and took the moonflower. But just as he was about to touch the moonflower, the youth suddenly reached out and grabbed the moonflower. Tang Mo turned to look at him. The baby-faced youth smiled. The previous moonflower was picked by you and the child also gave his moonflower to you. I don't have a flower and you don't seem to want to give a flower to me, can I have this flower? Tang Mo said, if you want it then take it. The baby-faced youth picked up the moonflower, put it in front of his nose and smelled it. Tut, it isn't fragrant. After taking the moonflower, the 3 people examined this deserted corridor. The thin silver thread and red blood attracted Tang Mo's attention. He carefully examined the marks and the little boy's voice was heard. It seems they couldn't choose a path and started to fight. Was it the last person who didn't pass the path? Tang Mo turned to look at him. The little boy said, everyone understands that the task of finding the moonflower is the same and the difficulties encountered are the same. You already have my moonflower. Don't you believe me? Tang Mo looked at this precocious boy and seemed to see the shadow of another child in him. Tang Mo said, I don't believe you. I only believe you in 9 points. The little boy asked, there are still 91 points where you don't believe me. Tang Mo didn't answer. The baby-faced youth smiled and replied for Tang Mo even if there is only 1 point of disbelief, he won't believe you. He didn't believe me until now. How can he believe you? Tang Mo said lightly, compared to you, I trust him more. The baby-faced youth spread out his hands. The little boy looked at Tang Mo and the baby-faced youth for a long time. Then he said, I think everyone's next task is the same and that we shouldn't be enemies. Since we have to cooperation. I am called Fu Wensheng, it is my real name. What should I call you? Tang Mo's expression changed as he felt something wasn't right. The baby-faced youth smiled and said, my name is Bruce Wayne. His name is Zhao Zhao. The author has something to say, Tang, say it again. You name is Fu what? Wensha? Why the surname Fu always haunting me? Old Fu. Fu Wensheng, sister-in-law.